Before synthetic fertilizers or store-bought compost, ancient farmers had a way of feeding the land that was almost forgotten by modern agriculture. Long before anyone spoke of soil microbiomes, they understood something deeper, that living soil responds best to living food. And one of their most powerful tools wasn't manure or mulch, it was grain. Specifically, the leftover grains from harvest, barley, millet, emmer and rye, soaked, sprouted and buried into the soil to create a microbial feast. This method fed entire civilizations from the Fertile Crescent to the early Norse settlements, regenerating land season after season without the need for compost piles or industrial amendments. Today, as gardeners and homesteaders fight to bring back soil health, that ancient practice holds the key. If your garden beds feel tired, your compost isn't keeping up, or your soil seems alive only after you add chemical boosters, this old-world grain technique can reset everything. Let's uncover how it worked, why it's scientifically sound, and exactly how you can revive your own soil using the same method that sustained humanity for millennia. Ancient farmers discovered that sprouted grains awaken the soil. In ancient Mesopotamia and across early agrarian Europe, farmers learned that after a grain harvest, the leftover seed, especially when wetted by seasonal rains, would begin to sprout naturally. Those sprouting seeds released a burst of enzymes and sugars into the soil. The farmers noticed that wherever this happened, the next crop grew stronger, greener, and required less manure. Over time, they deliberately spread sprouted grains between crops, turning grain waste into a living soil tonic. What they didn't know, but what we understand today, is that this process activates powerful biochemical reactions underground. When a grain germinates, it releases root exudates rich in glucose, amino acids, and organic acids. These compounds feed beneficial bacteria and fungi that in turn release locked-up nutrients like phosphorus, calcium, and nitrogen. In short, sprouted grain isn't just a seed, it's a microbe buffet that wakes up the entire soil web. That's why these early farmers, from Egyptians along the Nile to Norse growers in those chilly climates, often said their grain made the soil breathe. It was their way of describing the microbial bloom happening right under their feet, you see. Now, modern science confirms why ancient grain feeding works better than compost alone. Compost, while valuable, is rather passive. It feeds soil slowly and unevenly. What the ancient grain method does differently is introduce living root activity directly into the soil before or between crops. So, when you soak and plant grains like barley, oats or rye, not for harvest, but as sacrificial feedstock, you're mimicking the natural cycle that built the world's most fertile soils. Grain roots grow quickly and shallowly, breaking compacted layers and exuding carbon compounds that supercharge microbial reproduction. These microbes then multiply and begin cycling nutrients faster than compost alone can achieve. The result is soil that warms faster in spring, drains better, and holds more carbon. Even a small test patch treated this way can turn from dull, dusty dirt into rich, dark, living soil in a single season. Quite remarkable, isn't it? In lab comparisons, soils treated with sprouted grain slurry have shown a rapid increase in fungal biomass and a significant boost in nitrogen-fixing bacteria. That's because the enzymes from sprouting amylase, protease and phytase, act like keys, unlocking nutrients that were previously inaccessible. Compost can't replicate that dynamic action because it lacks live root chemistry. Here's how you can feed your soil organisms using ancient grain techniques. You don't need an ancient field or traditional tools to use this method. Just some grain, water, and a bit of patience. Choose a whole, untreated grain, such as barley, rye, or oats. Soak it in clean water for 24 to 48 hours until tiny roots just begin to appear. At this stage, you've activated the enzymes, but not yet committed the grain to full growth. Next, take these sprouted grains and scatter them directly across your soil surface or lightly rake them into the top few inches of your raised beds. Water well, then cover with a thin layer of mulch or straw to hold in moisture. Over the next week, the grains will sprout and send delicate roots into the topsoil. Those roots release carbon-rich exudates that attract beneficial microbes almost immediately. After about 2 weeks, just before the grains grow tall, cut them down and let them decompose right where they grew. The roots remain underground, feeding soil organisms, while the tops add green biomass. This grow and drop technique jump-starts microbial life, builds organic matter, and improves structure faster than traditional compost can manage on its own. If you're short on time, you can skip planting altogether and make a grain brew. Blend sprouted grains with water to create a thick slurry, then pour or spray it over your garden beds. This liquid biostimulant delivers the same enzymes and sugars in a concentrated form, feeding microbes and plants at once. Once those grains decompose, your soil begins to transform. Worms move in, fungal hyphae stretch through the bed, and nutrients become more available to crops. You'll notice your soil holding moisture longer and plant roots reaching deeper. In practical terms, that means stronger seedlings, fewer pest outbreaks, and less need for constant feeding. Even better, this method works in any climate. In hot, dry regions, the sprouted grain layer protects soil from heat and evaporation. In cold zones, it adds early-season warmth as decomposition generates mild heat. And because the grains are short-lived, they don't compete with your vegetables, they prepare the ground for them. Ancient farmers rotated this practice seasonally, often between cash crops or at the end of harvest. Today, you can do the same between growing cycles or whenever your soil feels depleted. It's a flexible, low-cost strategy that turns forgotten pantry grains into living fertilizer. This ancient method reminds us that soil isn't just dirt, it's alive. What made those ancient farmers so successful wasn't luck or superstition. It was a deep respect for the living nature of soil. They knew that fertility wasn't stored in sacks or spread with shovels. It was cultivated through cycles of life and decay. Sprouted grains represented the spark that kept that cycle turning. By bringing this practice back, modern growers can step beyond the endless loop of compost turning and fertilizer mixing. You're not replacing compost entirely. You're upgrading it. You're adding something living that compost can't provide: biological ignition. So, the next time you finish a season and look at tired, crusted soil, skip the bagged amendments. Soak a handful of grain instead. Give your soil a meal that it can digest instantly, one that speaks the same biochemical language ancient fields once knew. If this kind of deep, time-tested wisdom resonates with you, make sure to subscribe to Hydrahaven for more forgotten agricultural techniques brought back to life. Share this with fellow growers who understand that the best farming secrets aren't invented, they're rediscovered. Because sometimes the answer to feeding your soil isn't in the compost bin, it's in a handful of ancient grain,